Hi all, Rob here from RM Woodcraft. I'm working on some custom built-in cabinets, and today I want to show you how I make the doors without using any mechanical fasteners. So they're pretty simple shaker doors. There's just 5 components to it. It's, two side rails, top rail, a bottom rail, and then the insert, the panel insert. The wood I'm using, since these are going to be painted, I'm using poplar. Poplar is, it's reasonably hard, it's strong, it's got a nice tight grain, so it paints up really well. And then the birch sanded plywood, just because it has a nice finish on it already. So the way I find to make this the easiest is to set up your table saw with a dado blade. Then you take your 4 rails, make sure you mark the face so you have the correct orientation in the saw. You cut your dado into all 4 rails. Once you have your dado set up, then you need to cut your tenons for the top and the bottom rail. And what I like to do is I cut the top rail an inch bigger than the size I need, because my dado's ½ inch on either side. So I'm going to remove a ½ inch from either side of the top rail to make up my tendons. And the easiest way I find to make the tendons is also on the table saw. So let me move this fence out of your way. You set up your miter gauge with a 90-degree angle on it, so it's perpendicular to the blade. And what you need to make sure you do is you need to set the depth. Remember, this tendon is not going to be here, it's going to be just a square piece of wood, so I set the depth to the groove, so you have the correct tendon size. And once you have that set, you just use your miter gauge here, and you just cut the tendon in 2 or 3 passes, both sides, and you'll come out with a tendon that looks like that. And then once the tendon is set up, both tendons, you'll be ready to glue this together. One more thing I like to do too is I like to put a bead on here, just because I like the way it looks, and also it just holds the paint a little bit better. Sometimes if you have, a sharp edge, the paint doesn't adhere to it very well. So also the easiest way I find to put this little chamfer on there is also with the table saw. So I have another table saw set up over here. I just set my blade bevel to 45 degrees, and I, run it through on both sides, all 4 rails I run through. And then that takes care of the insides and the outsides. For the end grains are not addressed. It's kind of hard to do that on the table saw. So once I have this all glued up, I like to just take my my router with a chamfering bit and just run it around the outside to give it also that little 1/8 inch bead there. So once you have that all done, you can glue this up. And what I like to do is I set my panel into the dado without any glue. I like my panel to float in there, so that if there's any expansion due to moisture or whatnot, it won't push the rails out, it won't buckle or anything like that. And also, this panel is also going to be cut bigger than your dimensions, because it's going to sit in the dado. So like I said, ½ inch on each side. Instead of cutting the panel an inch bigger, I cut it 7/8 just to give it some room to expand and contract in there. So the only thing I glue are the tendons. I put glue all around the tendons, put it all together. I have one of these Betsy frame clamps. I set it in a frame clamp. I try not to put too much pressure on it, because what it wants to do when you put too much pressure on is these joints here, it wants to kind of twist them up like this if you put too much pressure. So I use minimal pressure, just enough to hold it where it needs to be. And just as And added insurance, what I like to do too is I usually just set it on a flat surface like my table saw. I lay it flat on the table saw, and then I just weight it down, just to keep it nice and flat. So once that's all glued up, you're ready to set your hinges. And this is my prototype door here. This is what I made before I started this project. So you can see it, dressed in white. But to set the hinges, I have this Kreg, I guess you'd call it mortising hinge jig. And all of these hinges now are pretty much standardized, these cabinet hinges, and these are soft close hinges. And this jig is pretty easy. It just has a depth guide for how much reveal you want the door to have on the cabinet. So each one of these numbers corresponds to like about 1/8 of an inch of movement. So you just set this on here, you clamp it down, you drill it out. It has a stop on it, so you can't go too deep, and you end up with a perfect little mortise there to accept your hinges. And that is pretty much it. And again, here's what it looks like on the cabinet. So thanks for watching. Cheers.